These were the things Dagny had heard about Midas Mulligan. She had never met him. 7 years ago, Midas Mulligan had vanished. He left his home one morning and was never heard from again. On the next day, the depositors of the Mulligan Bank in Chicago received notices requesting that they withdraw their funds, because the bank was closing. In the investigations that followed, it was learned that Mulligan had planned the closing in advance and in minute detail. His employees were merely carrying out his instructions. It was the most orderly run on a bank that the country ever witnessed. Every depositor received his money down to the last fraction of interest due. All of the bank's assets had been sold piecemeal to various financial institutions. When the books were balanced, it was found that they balanced perfectly, to the penny. Nothing was left over. The Mulligan Bank had been wiped out. No clue was ever found to Mulligan's motive, to his personal fate, or to the many millions of his personal fortune. The man and the fortune vanished as if they had never existed. No one had had any warning about his decision, and no events could be traced to explain it. If he had wished to retire, people wondered, why hadn't he sold his establishment at a huge profit, as he could have done, instead of destroying it? There was nobody to give an answer. He had no family, no friends. His servants knew nothing. He had left his home that morning as usual, and did not come back. That was all. There was, Dagny had thought uneasily for years, a quality of the impossible about Mulligan's disappearance. It was as if a New York skyscraper had vanished one night, leaving nothing behind but a vacant lot on a street corner. A man like Mulligan, and a fortune such as he had taken along with him, could not stay hidden anywhere. A skyscraper could not get lost. It would be seen rising above any plain or forest chosen for its hiding place. Were it destroyed, even its pile of rubble could not remain unnoticed. But Mulligan had gone, and in the 7 years since, in the mass of rumors, guesses, theories, Sunday supplement stories, and eyewitnesses who claimed to have seen him in every part of the world, no clue to a plausible explanation had ever been discovered. Among the stories there was one so preposterously out of character that Dagny believed it to be true. Nothing in Mulligan's nature could have given anyone ground to invent it. It was said that the last person to see him, on the spring morning of his disappearance, was an old woman who sold flowers on a Chicago street corner by the Mulligan Bank. She related that he stopped and bought a bunch of the year's first bluebells. His face was the happiest face she had ever seen. He had the look of a youth starting out into a great, unobstructed vision of life lying open before him. The marks of pain and tension, the sediment of years upon a human face, had been wiped off, and what remained was only joyous eagerness and peace. He picked up the flowers as if on a sudden impulse, and he winked at the old woman, as if he had some shining joke to share with her. He said, "Do you know how much I've always loved it, being alive?" She stared at him, bewildered, and he walked away, tossing the flowers like a ball in his hand. A broad, straight figure in a sedate, expensive businessman's overcoat, going off into the distance against the straight cliffs of office buildings, with the spring sun sparkling on their windows. "Midas Mulligan was a vicious bastard with a $sign stamped on his heart," said Lee Hunsaker in the fumes of the acrid stew. "My whole future depended upon a miserable $500,000, which was just small change to him. But when I applied for a loan, he turned me down flat, for no better reason than that I had no collateral to offer. How could I have accumulated any collateral when nobody had ever given me a chance at anything big? Why did he lend money to others but not to me? It was plain discrimination. He didn't even care about my feelings. He said that my past record of failures disqualified me for ownership of a vegetable pushcart, let alone a motor factory. What failures? I couldn't help it if a lot of ignorant grocers refused to cooperate with me about the paper containers. By what right did he pass judgment on my ability? Why did my plans for my own future have to depend upon the arbitrary opinion of a selfish monopolist? I wasn't going to stand for that. I wasn't going to take it lying down. I brought suit against him." "You did what?" "Oh, yes," he said proudly. "I brought suit. I'm sure it would seem strange in some of your hidebound eastern states, but the state of Illinois had a very humane, very progressive law under which I could sue him. I must say it was the first case of its kind, but I had a very smart liberal lawyer who saw a way for us to do it. It was an economic emergency law, which said that people were forbidden to discriminate for any reason whatever against any person in any matter involving his livelihood. It was used to protect day laborers and such. But it applied to me and my partners as well, didn't it? So we went to court and we testified about the bad breaks we'd all had in the past, and I quoted Mulligan saying that I couldn't even own a vegetable pushcart. And we proved that all the members of the Amalgamated Service Corporation had no prestige, no credit, no way to make a living, and therefore the purchase of the motor factory was our only chance of livelihood, and therefore Midas Mulligan had no right to discriminate against us, and therefore we were entitled to demand a loan from him under the law. Oh, we had a perfect case, all right. But the man who presided at the trial was Judge Narragansett, one of those old-fashioned monks of the bench who thinks like a mathematician and never feels the human side of anything. He just sat there all through the trial like a marble statue, like one of those blindfolded marble statues. At the end, he instructed the jury to bring in a verdict in favor of Midas Mulligan, and he said some very harsh things about me and my partners. But we appealed to a higher court, and the higher court reversed the verdict and ordered Mulligan to give us the loan on our terms. He had 3 months in which to comply, but before the 3 months were up, something happened that nobody can figure out, and he vanished into thin air, he and his bank. There wasn't an extra penny left of that bank to collect our lawful claim. We wasted a lot of money on detectives trying to find him, as who didn't? But we gave it up. No, thought Dagny. No. Apart from the sickening feeling it gave her, this case was not much worse than any of the other things that Midas Mulligan had borne for years. He had taken many losses under laws of a similar justice, under rules and edicts that had cost him much larger sums of money. He had borne them, and fought, and worked the harder. It was not likely that this case had broken him. What happened to Judge Narragansett? She asked involuntarily, and wondered what subconscious connection had made her ask it. She knew little about Judge Narragansett, but she had heard and remembered his name, because it was a name that belonged so exclusively to the North American continent. Now she realized suddenly that she had heard nothing about him for years. "Oh, he retired," said Lee Hunsaker. "He did?" The question was almost a gasp. "Yeah." "When?" "Oh, about 6 months later." "What did he do after he retired?" "I don't know. I don't think anybody's heard from him since." He wondered why she looked frightened. Part of the fear she felt was that she could not name its reason either. "Please tell me about the motor factory," she said with effort. "Well, Eugene Lawson of the Community National Bank in Madison finally gave us a loan to buy the factory, but he was just a messy cheapskate. He didn't have enough money to see us through. He couldn't help us when we went bankrupt. It was not our fault. We had everything against us from the start. How could we run a factory when we had no railroad? Weren't we entitled to a railroad? I tried to get them to reopen their branch line, but those damn people, the Taggart Trans—" He stopped. "Say, are you by any chance one of those Taggarts?" "I'm the operating vice president of Taggart Transcontinental." For a moment he stared at her in blank stupor. She saw the struggle of fear, obsequiousness, and hatred in his filmy eyes. The result was a sudden snarl. "I don't need any of you big shots. Don't think I'm going to be afraid of you. Don't expect me to beg for a job. I'm not asking favors of anybody. I bet you're not used to hear people talk to you this way, are you?" "Mr. Hunsaker, I will appreciate it very much if you will give me the information I need about the factory." "You're a little late getting interested. What's the matter? Your conscience bothering you? You people let Jed Starnes grow filthy rich on that factory, but you wouldn't give us a break. It was the same factory. We did everything he did. We started right in manufacturing the particular type of motor that had been his biggest money-maker for years. And then some newcomer nobody ever heard of opened a two-bit factory down in Colorado by the name of Nielsen Motors and put out a new motor of the same class as the Starnes model at half the price. We couldn't help that, could we? It was all right for Jed Starnes. No destructive competitor happened to come up in his time, but what were we to do? How could we fight this Nielsen when nobody had given us a motor to compete with his?